Hi there and welcome. I'm Tom and I've set up my grinder lab to help you find the right grinder for your preferred coffee style and your preferred budget. I want to show you how I've set up my grinder lab to benefit you the next time you're wanting to figure out which grinder to buy. Now, by way of introduction to the lab, you can see from my logo here that I've got Grind, Blind, Taste, Compare, which means that the grinder lab is set up for blind taste comparisons between two different grinders, not refractometer comparisons, not particle analyzer comparisons, but blind taste comparisons. Because at the end of the day, regardless of what any instrument says, it's our taste buds that will be the final judge of any grinder. And when it comes to choosing a grinder, my method is a big advantage, I think, over a lot of the traditional blind tasting methods. And the easiest way to explain that difference is to first show you my Espresso grinder lab setup. And yes, there's a filter grinder lab too. And then I'll explain why I've set it up that way and how that could benefit you when it comes to choosing your next grinder. So let's pull back the curtains on the grinder Espresso lab. Ta-da! And you'll see that I've set up two identical espresso machines, two E61 ECM Puristicas, and I've calibrated them so that they match each other in terms of temperature and pressure using one of these Passado temperature and pressure devices. What happens with the grinder lab is, having got the two machines performing as near as identical as humanly possible, I introduce another variable, and this time it's a deliberate variable in the form of two different grinders. In this example, you'll see a modded Breville Smart Grinder Pro going up against a DF64 Gen 2 with stock burrs. And what I'll be doing in Grind, Blind, Taste, Compare is I'll be grinding the same bean in each grinder. I'll then prepare the two pucks into two portafilters, place them into two preheated espresso machines, and then run two pours simultaneously so that in the cup, the temperature is pretty much near identical. Then I'll blind taste the two using a Lazy Susan to mix up the examples. I'll note the results on a proprietary log and I'll share those results with you. Now, to show you how this works in a helicopter view, if you can imagine you're looking down from above on this, I put together a little video where I've got a Varia VS3 taking on the DF64 Gen 2. Let me step back and show you what that looks like. So you see here that I'm weighing some beans, putting them in each of the two grinders, grinding the DF64 Gen 2 first, getting the puck prepared, and into the Puristica group head it goes. Same for the VS3. And then we pour at exactly the same time, take the cups, turn them around, so mix them up, sample them, log the differences, do that 3 times, and then turn the cups up to see which espresso came from which grinder. Welcome back. So now you've seen how the grinder lab works for espresso. The question you might have is, Tom, why don't you just use one espresso machine, make the espressos back to back, let them cool to room temperature so they're both the same temperature, kind of like they do with cupping, like most people do? And the answer is simple. The reason is that I want to taste each espresso like you're going to taste them at home, which is probably not at room temperature. It's probably fresh out of your espresso machine. And if I had just the one espresso machine and I made one coffee after the other, even assuming a hot cup, there's going to be a 5 degrees Celsius difference between the first coffee and the second coffee. And because coffee flavor changes as it cools, that would mean I'm not comparing like for like. The only variable I want to be different are the coffee grinders. So in summary, I'm using two espresso machines so I can sample each coffee at the same temperature, and the espresso is fresh out of the espresso machine, just like you drink it at home. So your next question could be, well, what sort of grinders are you going to be comparing? And the answer is mostly single dose grinders designed for home prosumer use, possibly some hopper grinders as well, but nothing that's designed for commercial use, because that's a whole different world. And with the comparisons, as opposed to reviews on individual machines, which I'll still be posting, I'll mostly be comparing grinders with a couple of exceptions, but mostly within a certain price bracket, because That's how most people go shopping for a grinder, looking at different options within a certain budget. For example, let's zoom in on one example. Here is a DF64V versus a niche duo, and they're going to duke it out with the grind, blind, taste, compare, log, share the results with you. Or I might review the DF64V alongside a DF64 Gen 2, because I get questions regularly as to which one is more suitable for various different purposes. Also, we can actually occasionally go out of the budget bracket, if you like, and compare something like a Varia VS3, which is about half the price of a DF64V, and I can let you know what the difference is in the cup. And it doesn't have to be different grinders or different burrs. It could actually be something like the Nucleus Paragon frozen ball. Does the espresso from that taste different? And if so, how? Than from just a straight pour on the other side of the grinder lab. And another question I want the answer to, and you might too, is it worth going from a 64 mil burr to an 83 mil burr? There's a lot of extra money you have to pay for an 83 mil burr. Can I tell the difference in the cup? If I can, you probably can as well. Now, quick heads up, a little bit of background. I also have a regular day-to-day espresso bench. This is what it looks like right now. As of this morning, you can see there's a couple of Varia VS3s and a couple of DF64Vs and the decent espresso machine. So this is where I'm dialing in all the grinders and trying all the kit before it goes to the grinder lab. And typically a grinder has sat on my bench and got daily use pretty much day in, day out for about 3 months before it gets reviewed. So that's it. That's what the grinder lab is all about. At its core, it's about blind grind taste comparing two different variables, be they coffee grinders, coffee burrs, or coffee kit of some sort. And yes, I did mention that I have a filter grinder lab as well, and this is what that looks like. So that's it from me. That is an introduction to the grinder lab. Make sure you subscribe at the bottom of this page or one of the pop-ups to get updates whenever I post a grinder lab, grind blind taste compare. Cheers, everyone.